Hello everyone, thanks for joining us on Insights. My name is Nnamdi Odipo and it's good to be here to be here on the program. This week we will celebrate the woman, precisely the Nigerian woman who strives for excellence and success, who continues to break the glass ceilings, whether professional in terms of self-actualization. The Nigerian woman who struggles with daily issues of subsistence in the hope of building herself, building her family and the community as well. That woman, her strength, her true value and worth, and the fears that she has as well, are part of issues that we will be talking about down the line in the course of our conversation. Of course, we will be having our accompanying segments with Elizabeth Omori also on standby with a conversation that I suspect revolves around the Nigerian woman. Anyways, let's get started.
Whatever the issues are,
the National Assembly is constitutionally empowered to scrutinize,
however complex or intricate.
We have involved all the academia, the members of the academia. We have involved the academies.
Be it government policies or in fact any issue of public concern.
Our job is to help you gain clarity and make sense of it all.
This is not really healthy for our democracy.
There's a lot of aggrievance in terms of who has been in power longest and who becomes the governor of the state.
It's also in the quality of food being consumed.
After all, perception is insight.
And gaining understanding is also getting insight.
Say what you want to, what you want to say about the Nigerian woman, but she truly deserves her flowers for standing tall and paying her dues in spite of society's many rules and society's many expectations. In spite of the cultural inhibitions and even setting holdbacks of a feminine constitution, the Nigerian woman continues to demonstrate an uncanny appetite to rise above all that is thrown at her, so that even when her shoulders are weighed down, she struts with the gaits of a true African queen. Well, while that may be or may hold true for many amongst the women folk, there are, however, those still caught and held down by varying issues cutting across several fairs. There's so much to talk about, and I do have a guest ready and eager to get started. My guest is Veronica Ngozi Osuo, lawyer, philanthropist, and gender advocate. She is also the president, South Professional Women, and she joins us here on Insights on this episode. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Nice to have you here, actually. So, so much progress appears to have been made when it comes to the empowerment of women in Nigeria. Absolutely no doubt about that. But of course, many issues remain when it comes to perhaps maybe access to education, access to healthcare, and economic opportunities, if I'm not mistaken. Tell me something. For you, what are the issues you consider topmost as, topmost gender issues that you think still remain and subsist? And how do these issues make women more susceptible to perhaps poverty, violence, and other forms of discrimination?
Yes, I would just like to start by saying that gender issues are worldwide. Nigeria, there are specific problems that differ a bit. But on a general note, these are problems of patriarchy. They come from generations over and over again. So trying to resolve them will also take time. So what Nigerian woman is doing presently is to take them one after the other. Some people have fought the huge fight for us. The initial women, let me come to Nigeria and talk about women riots, for instance. There's been a lot of work done by women at various stages, struggling to get women to even get involved in basic things like voting. It took so long before women were allowed to vote. It took so long before women could control even their health issues. With all those kind of problems coming over a long time, I want to say that the Nigerian women has been so resilient in fighting this. For now, yesterday we celebrated. We were everywhere trying to congratulate ourselves, majorly to celebrate what the women of yesteryears achieved. Think that women struggled to do simple things, very, very basic things, like get employment. Now, all those are history now. We can get employment, but how many women are able to get to the top of jobs? That is where we are. And for this year, we're looking at making it possible for women to go back to the basics, learn, educate the girl, educate the woman. Let her have those things that will make her stand up like men.
So when you say invest in women, that's exactly what
we're
it means.
Investing. Yes.
Starting from the basis, which perhaps is education, or which clearly is education, I should say.
Yes. You find that the stereotypes in the world generally, and particularly in Nigeria, is one that just favors the men. And it starts from being a boy.
Patriarchy.
The patriarchy. It just starts from being a boy. So 2 children are born, one girl, the other boy. The training from that day is different. The girl is taught to ensure that food is on the table by cooking it. And the boy is trained to ensure that food is on the table by going to fetch money or look for money one way or the other to do that. You start with ordinary primary school and you see a boy and a girl in the same class, it is expected that the boy will do better than the girl. These are just some stereotypes that are there. What we're trying to see this time around is teach it from that fundamentals. Let parents bring up their sons to know that they are going to get into the world to compete with people who have brain. Let the girls from beginning learn that they are going to come out to the world to work with boys who have brains. So we're looking at everybody at the same level of the brain. Your head, what can you do? What do you know? Not your strength as in physical strength. Luckily for us.
Yes. Let me let you land on that.
Yeah, luckily for us, the world has really changed. In the past, yes, you needed your physique, your strength to get things done. But today you don't. You don't need your strength. You just need your head. You need your brain. And we're saying to the girls, understand it, learn it, and be able to use your brain to succeed.
You know,
so
that's quite, and it's even more interesting, I mean, this is more germane to our discussion because we're actually highlighting the role and the capacity of women, as it were, the Nigerian woman, as it were, you know, as we talk, you know, about these issues as they come. I mean, you've talked about patriarchy. I had to help you re-echo it because I noticed how you just dialed down on the issue of patriarchy. You talked about stereotypes. I mean, it throws up this whole conversation about women, culture, traditions. So I'd like for us to talk a bit about that and, you know, how, you know, these traditions have tended to hold women down and back a bit. But of course, over time, we've seen the changes that have been made. We've seen the gains that have been made through advocacy as well. How much so would you say some of these inhibitive culture, customs, and traditions, how much so would you say they have changed over time, perhaps with advocacy? And how would you describe the change, and what would you like to see happen in coming years, or what would you describe substantially as progress when it comes to this whole issue of inhibitive customs and traditions still subsisting in Nigeria?
Well, if I go back to my own village and all the villages in Nigeria, for instance, you just have a king. And the king's role is to ensure that everybody else stays under. Now, the men in the society see themselves as the kings over their own homes. So all the kings stand over all the women. And that's just what it says. So over the years, the society allows it like that. If you don't do that, you are an outcast, your family will reject you. So from beginning, women are trained to just take instructions. This is still happening. This is still happening everywhere. The areas where we have made advancements are the more critical ones, like, okay, we no longer will kill twins because they are born twins. Yes, we can't kill them anymore. So such very tough ones are out. The issue of how will the girl child take advantage of education, that only went down. It's still there. When a man cannot afford to train everybody, he just decides who to train. And in deciding who to train, he's looking at how his name will remain relevant. In our society, it is the male's name that is adopted. So a woman gets married, drops her name, picks up her husband's name. So for the man, to make sure that that name continues to
isn't that the
extend.
woman's choice? The woman can choose to maintain her maiden name if she so desires. The woman now, these days, we see women having rights to property, to their father's property. We see women having rights to land. Isn't that progress?
That's progress. There's been a decision, actually. There was a Supreme Court decision somewhere in Ibadan that clearly allows women to inherit. But I can tell you, we've also worked for women who were completely disenfranchised just because they were women. Even if the law,
an example.
Even if the law says take.
Give us an example of what you experienced firsthand, an experience you've had. I mean, this one you just talked about.
There was a family in my local government. I happen to come from Delta and Inika local government. A man left his family, died, left his family with a wife and 7 children, 3 girls, and then boys. The rest were men. You know, these are old men now. One of the daughters asked for land that the father already gave to her before he died. And the brothers refused it. To the extent they went to court with their mother. They took their mother to court. So their mother, the girls, went to court against the brothers, one of them the most senior. We, at some point, had to step in because of the poverty that came upon this woman. And we followed to court. Okay. We supported to court. Court decided that the property be shared in such a manner that everybody gets something. But when we got home, well, we thought we had done a good job and we left.
Okay.
But when we got home, we were recalled because the people themselves, this is happening in a village called Uti Alohe. The king just said, no, yes, that could be the court's decision, but our tradition says that women do not inherit land, and they cannot. This lady will not inherit land.
This is quite an unfortunate scenario that you've painted out. And when things like these happen, what do you think is now required? Because the law clearly says what it says. So do you think it's in the implementation of, some of these laws, or you think we need to perhaps improve on the structure in terms of delivery now, public governance, so that communities like the one you've just talked about adhere to lay down rules and allow women, like the woman that you've just talked about, access to our land?
The thing is, you just got it right there. In fact, you've spoken for me. The thing we have seen in the field is that the law enforcement is still stereotyped. Because it is the men who generally implement. It's the men who make the laws. And they are still dependent on physical strength. We've had situations where you have the police, you give the police what it should be, you explain to the police, and the police says to you, Madam, they don't train you well. As a woman, you're not supposed. They just take a position. So I think it is majorly implementation. the laws, and that's why we keep celebrating Women's Day. What we just want people to realize is, okay, we've done this much. We also want you to assist us so we can do this. And happily, we also have a lot of men who support us to try and get these things. But the men are few. So we're struggling against too many things.
I tell you, there are lots of men out there. There are not few. There are many of them. Men like myself. I actually pride myself to be a feminist, as a matter of fact. I actually do that. And I want to assure you there are plenty of men out there supporting your cause, supporting your advocacy. And you talk about all of these issues, and it's not from the lack of capacity of women, because there are examples of women who have delivered the goods. When it comes to delivering on issues of national development, countless examples of that happening right now. But tell me, when it comes to women and their unique role, whether you want to look at how God created them physically, their ability to multitask, their quickness in terms of thinking, and how they are better organized than the other gender. How do they combine all of these roles, their role to God, role to man and society, to be able to deliver, especially in terms of, the aspect of national development?
It's a huge task, because the women who have been able to get to the top of the game are few, and they are not able to occupy the entire space. So there's a lot of pushback. Right now, I can tell you, for instance, I love a woman called Okonjo-Iweala Ngozi. These are some of the women who managed. And then as women struggle to that level, they struggle to put in their family name, just to be sure. But you see, it's all, what we really need is the support from the society.
Okay.
For instance, I got to the position of a chief executive in the power sector, and you know that power sector is basically a man's field, which so many fields are men's field. It is not because the men are pushing us back at that level. It is because we didn't have equal playing grounds. So the takeoff stage for the men and women, completely different. You want to run a 100-meter race. You place somebody 20 meters to the finishing point, and somebody else, a woman this time, is starting from 80.
Is that really what happens out there?
That is what
professionally?
Happens. That is what happens. So you are there, most times you are in a meeting of 500 people, and you are like 3 women. And then you are at the top level, 12 people, and you're just the only woman. Like I was the only woman of the 12 of us who were chief executives in the power sector. So it is tough. And there's this look down that you notice. And it comes from the way we were brought up, the stereotypes, the way we were taught to be. So a man walks into the room and looks at you as a woman, instead of looking at you as a chief executive. So he just looks at you and says, madam, you want some water to drink or something very out of point. And you find that as a woman, you're struggling to ensure that everybody accepts you. So in the process of that struggle, many times women also derail. So you find that women who get to the top do not really stay at the top for too long. The distractions are many. Women are generally more emotional and therefore more detailed. Women understand the problems that men don't see. So even in the public space, in the office environment, women tend to understand everybody's problem, solve it, and get everybody going. Men push it aside and get to the top. But the women don't get any support, majorly because it's very, very lonely there. For instance, when I left the power sector, I didn't understand the gender issues as I do now. At that time, I just felt people were pushing back because I was a woman. But now I know there's a little more than that. It is because they don't understand the kind of support that women require. So they just give the support that everybody requires, and that's the support the men require, since the men are in the majority all the time.
You know, I find this line of thoughts of yours quite fascinating, and ordinarily, well, I followed up the advocacy campaign right from when women were asking for gender equality, and then it moved on to gender equity. You know, but then I've always thought there was an aspect of this, of feminism, that I found quite intriguing, and that's because when you look at it, maybe from the context of gender equality, you know, and we've just talked about role and capacity, especially capacity. A woman, there's this very popular catchphrase that what a man can do, a woman can do better, even better. So, having that in mind, I've always thought that, look, why would it seem that sometimes women do certain things and then they quickly target something? I'm not talking about breaking the glass ceiling now. They target as somewhat extraordinary. Let me say something now. If a lion roars, for instance, or a fish swims, for instance, you don't consider that extraordinary because it's expected. That's what the fish does. So if, for instance, a woman becomes a pilot, why should that be considered extraordinary? Why is that a glass ceiling? I mean, so that's the aspect of feminism that I found quite intriguing. I would think, and this is my question to you, isn't that, I mean, this feeling of seeking for approval, you know, this feeling of seeking for approval that women often do, you know, isn't that perpetuating that stereotype that you've talked about in the beginning, that you said? So it will seem like women themselves are the one perpetuating the stereotype. If you say, look, I have done this, is extraordinary, that means ordinarily women cannot do it. Or what do you think about that? I mean, this line of argument.
I like it. And I just would like to say that this your argument seems to be everybody's argument, really. When we go for advocacy and we're trying to look for support and ask men to support us, they always start from, but what are you still looking for? You seem to have it all. So what are you doing that is extraordinary?
Exactly.
So what we are saying here is, we are not at the stage where we should be. If for the first time in history, out of 500 or 5 million Nigerians, one woman goes to become a pilot, she has to be celebrated because she's possibly the first woman to get to that stage.
Well, she's broken a glass ceiling. That's
so she has broken
necessarily
one glass ceiling.
Okay.
So we're looking for a situation where we will no longer celebrate it. And that will come when we have several women, many of them, getting to that level. Now, women will get to just below the glass ceiling. Everybody will struggle to get there. The men begin to jump across, and then the women are there because of other things that have nothing to do with their performance, other things, other distractions. These are areas where we're requiring help now, and we're asking for training. This time around, we're saying capacity. Let's build the capacity of the women. Okay. And that capacity building starts from the girl child. Let the girl child get proper education without distraction. And we believe that when once that happens, this whole issue of celebrate one woman will stop. I mentioned Okonja Iweala right now.
She's one amongst many.
She's one among many. And if you look at it, she's been there for a long time. She has left for a long time. We should have a lot of replacements, but we don't, because the men are there to oppress, to push down. Let me give you an example of what we saw.
Very quickly too, because the director just told me we're running out of time.
Oh, okay. Yes. What we saw in one of our advocacies, we went to manage some women who are in the prison. You cannot believe it. You find 10, 20, 50 women. They're just sitting there. What was the offense? 3 women married to the same man. The man came, decided to marry a 4th wife. The other women said, no, you can't. They fought. They were all arrested. He goes to the police station, he picks up one of the women, and he leaves the remaining 3 there. That is it. That's just the offense, nothing else. And the woman is there because there's nobody to bail her. So she just sits there until maybe organizations like ours come and we meet such cases and we try to help them and we try to bring them out. So those are the kind of things we see.
This is not a conversation. This, of course, this is not a one segment or a one-time conversation. I intend for us to push this conversation for as long as we can. It's the month for women, as a matter of fact. So we just may likely bring you back into the studio to continue this conversation. Of course, I know a part of your work is also on political inclusion, to try to close the gap between the genders as far as politics is concerned. Unfortunately, I cannot take you up on that at the moment. But just very quickly, before I let you go, and this is in concluding, and I know this might seem like a cliche, that what is the value of a woman or a woman's strength? There's this very popular song ringing in my head right now, but it's not just coming. I don't want to sing on national TV.
Don't sing it.
I will not, but I'd like to ask you real quick, and I would like, maybe not a monosyllabic response, but a very short response, if it's possible to say that in, say, 60 seconds. What is the true value of a woman?
A woman is resilient. A woman is smart. A woman is a goal-getter. And to put it mildly, a woman's total value is shown in children that can be brought up by that woman. So should I say, and let me be nice about it, that the value...
You can actually brag.
You give me the bragging rights, and
yes,
I will say that the value of the woman is, compared to a man, 70-40. Yes.
I'm feeling like I should defend my gender now.
70-40. Because the women are capable of multitasking. A woman does everything. Now food is expensive. You will see a woman dragging herself into the garden, bringing food, feeding the family, going back to work. Oh, goodness me. Well, I wish I could say more.
Well, I can also assure you that there are men who can do better. Veronica Ngozi, also a lawyer, philanthropist, and gender advocate. I'd like to thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very much for sharing your perspective on this issue. I'm actually very happy and excited that I brought you in as we celebrate the International Women's Day. I'd like to thank you so much indeed for coming on the program.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
As I celebrate the Nigerian woman, I'm particularly interested in the story of the rural woman. The one, that one in a small community somewhere in a village or maybe a semi-urban settlement who fears yet dares to dream of a place in building herself and building our community. I had the opportunity to hear from a few of them, and I'd like to share their stories with you. They spoke of their pride of being a woman, the joy and struggles of motherhood, as well as what it means to be a wife who contends with the daily strive and struggle for subsistence. Incidentally, we're not done yet, as Elizabeth Omoruyi is standing by with yet another conversation on the Nigerian woman.
The United Nations SDG Goal 5 states that gender equality is not only a fundamental human right, but a necessary foundation for a prosperous, peaceful and sustainable world. There has been progress over the last decades, but the world is not on track to achieve gender equality by 2030. Women and girls represent half of the world's population and therefore also half of its potential. But gender inequality persists everywhere and stagnates social progress. On average, women in the labor market still earn 23% less than men globally. Today, we will be celebrating the resilience of Nigerian women as they strive to achieve equity. And my guest, Chioma Ike-Jiani, a political scientist and media practitioner, will speak to us. Thank you so much, Ma, for joining us on Insights.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I celebrate you and other women out there as we celebrate ourselves.
Thank you.
Let's begin with your thoughts about the resilience of the Nigerian woman in search of a self-actualization. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that in particularly, I'm going to talk about, I know we're talking about Africa, but I'm going to actually focus in on Nigerian women. I think that Nigerian women are particularly resilient. You know, whenever you give Nigerian women an opportunity to do something, 9 out of 10, they always do it better. So we are very resilient in spite of the enormous challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis, whether we're constantly multitasking, whether it's the issue of poverty, whether it's getting basic health care. So there's a lot of challenges, and I'm going to take this opportunity as we look at the week of International Women's Day in really celebrating our Nigerian women, because they've come so far and they continue to be resilient in the face of such adversity. So we celebrate them.
All right. This theme is focusing on the importance of investing in women for growth. It means there has to be inclusion that can only happen if there is a collective responsibility. So how can this be driven to ensure equity?
Well, you know, I think the most important thing is to get our men to buy into giving women opportunity. One of the things that I've always tried to do is to try and educate and allow our men to give us a table on the seat. So I think, number one, in order to have that inclusion, it's really, really important to really emphasize educating. So whenever, I'm going to use myself as an opportunity, whenever I get that opportunity, I'm constantly advocating and educating our men folks to not be so threatened, to not be so, because sometimes change is very difficult. And I think one of the things that women bring into any inclusive environment is the diversity of thought. So if we can educate our men folks to give women an opportunity to participate and to add their quota, I think that's one of the fundamental things that we can add and advocate for. So in inclusion, I would say the number one thing is educating our men folks, because at the end of the day, they are the 9 out of 10 that will be able to give us the ability to sit on that table and to take decisions in issues that actually affect all of us in Nigeria.
Okay, so I understand you quite well, educating our men, allowing them to know what to do to make our women better. But really, what should be the panacea to driving inclusion for women? Should it be education for they themselves, investing in them, empowerment, or through support from the family system?
You know, if we're looking at Africa, one of the things that I think we have to look at is really diving into the cultural biases that actually navigate us from actually being inclusive. Because as much as some women want to be inclusive, there are cultural nuances that really limits us from being exclusive. So, and I think it's a very delicate balancing. What are some of the things that we can start to do today to actually tackle those cultural nuances that are more powerful than even educating. That's going to, let's start having those discussions and breaking down the cultural barriers that limit us. I'll give you an example. Saudi Arabia, an extremely conservative ecosystem. There's a new vision under the new kingdom, Vision 2030, that really gives the ability of women to participate more and to be very inclusive in a lot of their decision-making process. So, and they have cultural things that limit them, but they are tackling it. So one of the things that I would like to advocate as I use this platform is, can we start having those conversations? They're hard conversations. Sometimes we don't want to talk about it. We don't even want to deal with it. There are women folks out there that still believe that it is the men that are driving. So how do we tackle that in order to have an inclusive society where we women can actually have our own quota?
You know, earlier when you were explaining, giving us your thoughts on the resilience of the African women, you talked about challenges. We have poverty, we have health issues, we have a lack of education, we have financial instability, several factors. How do we tackle these challenges confronting women and girls? Because we are the most hit.
You know, I know this is crazy, but I'm really going to harp on education. I'm going to keep harping on education because when you educate a child, when you educate a girl child, you're actually educating a whole village. And I know I sound like a broken, repetitious thing, but I think education is one of the most fundamental things that we can really use to empower the society. Until we actually get serious and become very committed to educating, I think it's going to be a challenge to do everything else. I really do. I always tell people, because people say, Choma, you're so confident. One of the lessons, or one of the greatest gifts my father gave me was an education, because I believe that no matter where I go, because I have that ability to have critical thinking, because when you're educated, you have more knowledge, and more knowledge gives you more confidence.
Of course.
It is everything. And if you're not educated, you don't have the knowledge. You're not able to have critical thinking, and it becomes very difficult. So I continue to harp on education, education, education. That's the only thing, that's the only gift that we can give our women population. And so I'm going to stick to education.
It means education is key. All right, Madam Choma, I have a question for you. I know
Absolutely.
you have been in Canada for some time, and then you have seen how things work over there for women. So have we been able to advance because of women when we talk about equity? Have we made progress so far in this regard?
I actually think that we've retrograded backwards in Nigeria when I compare both. I think in Canada, it's interesting. In Canada, I was heavily involved in pushing the women agenda, because I think that in Canada, the women are more deliberate. For example, maybe it's because I worked a lot with the organized private sector. There is an organized private sector, and even in the government, there's a deliberate attempt by those decision makers. It is important for women to be in the room, because they bring that critical thinking that is a diversity of thought. I think in Nigeria, it's a little difficult. I honestly think that as a woman population, we have to be more deliberate. We have to be more together. I don't feel that there is a synergy It's very centered. I think that a lot of us are working in silos, and it's much more difficult. There are more events, there are more workshops. Different sectors make it, it's almost a mantra that if you're doing something, you have to include a woman. And I keep using the word deliberate because it comes from the top up. So like everything else, if there's a concerted effort from the top up that women matter, then we're going to get closer in bridging that gap. Those are the differences that I see. I think together, we stand much stronger than working individually. So those are just a few things that I see that is really a big difference. I'll give you an example. I went to Standard Chartered Bank, and I looked around and I said, oh, I'm going to get a T-shirt, Women's International Day. And I got a nice little pink ribbon, or was it purple, pink ribbon. In Canada, it would be much more, there would be much more of events on that particular day by different banks or different organizations. That's just a difference that I see.
Okay. I'm quite impressed with your explanation, but really knowing the fact that women are very, very important in nation building, what should the government, society, and families be doing to ensure that women attain their goals?
You know, I've often thought about this question that you've asked, and I continue to say, what's the missing piece? And here's my thought on this. I really think that first and foremost, when we talk about women, I think we women have to decide what role do we want to play in nation building. I think we really have to decide. There are a lot of cultural biases that still limits us from actually coming together as a block in deciding the role that we want to play. I mean, we are a massive voting block. In developed countries, they woo us. We matter. Whoever is running for president or prime minister, or they deliberately tackle us. I'm not sure that we're there yet here. I think that there's so many challenges that if I can just say that as a woman population, we need to come together more. Once we come together, men should be nervous. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. And this whole divide and conquer is the oldest trick in the book. We are a massive, well-oiled, brilliant female population that have done wonders worldwide, not to even talk of what we're doing in Nigeria. We are a powerhouse, and I'm telling you, the minute we decide we need to come together as a block that matters, it's game over.
Now, I think I like the fact that you mentioned making the men more nervous, not through competition, but we have to make a statement that we are there to make positive impacts. Now, let me take you back to the SDG Goal 5 on inclusion and equity. How do we achieve this goal before 2030?
There should be more allocated fund toward to education and health. We really need to be very deliberate about education. That's the only way we can do this, because if a child is educated, they can make an input. You know, when we look at equity, what is equity? What is empowerment? Equity and empowerment is having the ability to be free to do whatever it is that you want to do. That freedom is so critical, but it is that freedom that brings innovation. It is that freedom that changes the world. So, you know, if we have a goal I really think that it's education that's going to be the difference. Because I know that education has really changed my life. I don't know where I would be if I didn't have that opportunity. I don't know where I would be, and I worry for so many kids that want to be educated, but they don't have that ability. I worry. So I would have to go again that it's the simple thing as having an educated classroom and having a passionate teacher. And Nigerians have so many passionate teachers. So I'm going to put it down to education.
So education is very key, very, very key. Chioma Ikejani, I want to thank you so much for joining us on Insight today. Thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
I'm fascinated with the discourse on national monuments and assets and how much is being done to preserve and
look into the language issue. We have turned English to become like a pride value in our own cultural values.
It's not cash transfer. It's not a COVID-19.
Invasion 1897 was a deliberate
You know, many of these people coming to the urban areas now.
And applications, there are terms and conditions that
of course it is the union of two people, a man and a woman coming together.
My name is Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori.
That's it for today. See you again same time next week for more insights. My name is Nnamdi Odipo. See you next week. Cheers.